In today's video, we're going to be talking about the worst study mistake that you can make in an exam. If you're interested, go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're doing CXE this year, you can go ahead and check the description down below where you can find CXE lessons, the CXE study guide, and other resources to help you in your CXE exams. You can go ahead and check those out down below. But basically, this is the worst study mistake that you can make going into an exam. If you haven't watched the other video, the worst study method, you can go ahead and check that out. We're going to be focusing on the worst study mistake that you can make a little bit deeper. So basically, we're going to be mentioning two terms, right? And these two terms are going to basically sum up the mistake, right? So when you're studying for an exam, right, you can either study for recognition or you can study for recall, right? And both of them have their benefits, but listen to this very carefully. It depends on what exam you are doing, right? So for example, if you're doing let's just say in university, or if you get to that stage, MCQ, if you're doing MCQ, or even at the CSEC level, you're doing MCQ, an MCQ exam, the paper one exam, what would work best for that exam is recognition and not recall, right? And everybody knows what recognition is. It's basically seeing, it's like I'm here blank and I see an apple and I realize, okay, it's an apple. I recognize that it's an apple, right? That is recognition. Then recall is me literally sitting here and I don't see an apple, but my face literally I think and I say, okay, an apple is red or it have a certain shape, and that's recall. Come here, remember how an apple basically look, right? So if you're doing an MCQ exam, you have to use recognition, because on that MCQ paper there will be options, and the task in an MCQ exam is to recognize what the answer is, meaning that the answer is literally on the page already. You just need to recognize it. And that is why, especially when you're preparing for your paper one exams, people always say, watch the past paper videos, watch the paper ones, or you do the paper ones, watch the teachers on YouTube and see what answers they select. Because everyone knows that the paper one MCQ questions, they usually repeat. Everyone knows that CXE has a bank, like they might have 1,000 questions and they just shuffle and, choose 60, and that's your new paper for the 2025 or 2026, right, year. So basically that's how it's done. So if you're doing an MCQ exam, recognition would work best because the answer is already there. Now, if you are doing a free response or a short answer paper, then recognition will absolutely not work because there is nothing on the paper to recognize. Meaning that it will say, okay, if you're doing a biology exam, it says state the steps in cell division, right? What are you going to be recognizing? There's no prompt on the paper like that for you to recognize. So when you read a question like that, short answer question, and you see lines under it, and they say, explain the steps to cell division, they might say that. And you will have to literally use a recall, which is you thinking, remembering, searching in your memory to find out what the steps are for cell division, right? So it's very different from recognition. You just have to recognize in that short answer test, and that's the case for the paper 2 exam for CXE. In that paper 2 exam, it is alright. So basically, CXE is testing for recall in the paper 2, and you're testing for recognition in the paper 1, right? Because guess what? In the paper 2, there's nothing to recognize. You have to recall, think, remember, search your memory for the answer in order to write something on the paper. So you studying in a way that is only utilizing recognition. Let's just say you're preparing for your paper 2 exam. You sitting down and watching past paper videos on paper 1, just seeing MCQ and your MCQ questions and their answers, not going to help you in the paper 2. Because those questions will not be there, those type of answers will not be there. That is not what you're testing for in the paper 2 exam. They're testing your ability to recall information, to remember the information stored down in your memory, right? That's the main difference. So in that short answer, in an exam that is short answer, like the paper 2, like the CXC paper 2 exam, they expect you to recall, not recognize the answer. So when you're in that exam, you say, okay, all right, cell division, all right, they're talking about, or if the question specifically says mitosis, list the steps, state the steps in mitosis. You literally have to be thinking, okay, you know, say prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and all that stuff, telophase. You have to literally be remembering. That's recall. In the MCQ exam, you use recognition because the answer is already there. Now, the mistake that people make is that they don't know when to use which. You cannot use recall for you cannot use basically you cannot use recognition for a short answer question. Use it to recognize. And then the thing now about recall is that recall might be able to work a little in a paper 1 exam or an MCQ. Let's MCQ exam, because let's just say, all right, you get the paper 1 CXC exam, and let's just say that, okay, you watch the past paper videos and everything and blah blah blah, and now you're in that exam, you're looking at the paper and you're saying to yourself, okay, maybe I don't know this question, maybe you don't remember what the answer was to this one. That is where your recognition failed you and you don't really remember, right? And then in that moment, if the question was saying something like let me say, which is the least, I don't even know which subject, let's just say they say which of the following processes does not happen in the body or something like that, I don't know. And you are there saying, I don't remember this question, I don't know the answer, or I remember the question but I don't remember which answer was chosen, and recognition is failing you. Then that is when you can start thinking and try to use recall and try to bring back everything and say, okay, what were the processes that happened here and what processes happened there. And that is where you can utilize recall in some cases for an MCQ exam. But the main study strategy for an MCQ exam is usually recognition, because the answer is already on the paper, right? So that's the biggest difference, or that's the worst study mistake that you can make, using recall when you're not supposed to, and using recognition when you're not supposed to. So even though people always say, do your past papers, you have to have the knowledge or the common sense to realize that me just sitting down and watching past papers, it's very specific to what exam you're doing. So you sitting down and you watch those paper 1s, the videos and MCQ and all of that stuff, and you see the answer and you remember the answer, and then you go and sit your paper, you literally do that, and you sit your paper 1 exam, it will work, right? It will work out for you. And if you're watching past paper videos for your paper 1, watching 1 year won't help, because as I said before, it's a whole bank. It's a bank of questions that CXC has, right? It's a bank of questions. So it's not like, okay, they're going to just copy and paste the 2024 exam and give you back for 2026. They won't do that. It's literally a bank. So you might literally see, when you go into that exam, you might see 2 questions from 2024. You might see 5 questions from 2015. You might see 4 questions from maybe 2017, and you might see even 1 question all the way from 2010. And basically that's how CXC does it. So watching past paper videos or doing or printing past papers for paper 1 from 1 or 2 years really won't help. You need to be doing it for a good amount of years. If you can get up to 10 years worth of past papers, then that would be good. That would be better to help you in preparing for your exams. But just 1 year won't cut it, right? But the main thing that MCQ exam tests for is recognition, right? Recognition. So you have to know how to study to fit recognition. In the paper 2 exam, they want recall. There's no answer on the paper. You have to remember it. You have to search your brain for it. You have to dig deep for it in that paper 2 exam. That is why it's the study method that you would utilize is recall. So basically, when you're studying, what you'd have to do is try to read it and then try to remember it. Read it, then try to remember it on your own. Try to make it stick, right? Because it's testing because it's testing for something different in that paper 2 exam, right? So you have to know when to use recall, you have to know when to use recognition, because they are literally 2 different study methods that work for different exams. Using recall in the paper 2 exam, which is the short answer questions paper, it will help you to answer faster. So if you're going to the exam, don't just sit down and look on the question and just blank, or yeah, try recall, but you try recognize, but there's nothing to recognize on that paper 2 exam. So what you need to do is to use recall. If you recall and you recall well, you'll be able to answer the question faster. Your answer will also have a better structure because you actually know where you are at, because you actually remember the stuff. You'll also have better retention of information if you have studied with recall from before and you win at the exam. Your question will be structured, you'll remember it clearly, so better retention of the information. Overall, it will just save you mental stress, just mental stress and just overall energy. Because the energy we will take and just did and puzzled and blah blah blah, you can just skip all of that. You look at the question, you recall, and you recall and you remember, say, okay, these are the steps to mitosis, and you just write them down. Right? So there are benefits to using both recall and recognition, but you just have to know when and which exam to use them in order for it to work out. Anyways, this is the end of this video. Go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe, and this is the end of this video. Alright, bye guys.